Hi, my name is Kati Pino and I am a senior associate at the law firm Hedman. And today I will be talking about founders agreement. Basically, I will be going over what is a founders agreement, do you need one, what is inside a founders agreement, and why it is generally a good idea to have a founders agreement. So let's get going. So a founders agreement, as the name suggests, is an agreement between founders. Founders are the people who originally come together to work on a startup idea. Usually this is a group of 3 to 4 people, but you can also be just one, you can only be one founder, you can also be more than 3 to 4 people, but generally the core team is about 4 people. So it is an agreement between those people. Is it compulsory to have a founders agreement? No, it is not. You can very well function without a founders agreement, but a founders agreement is a way to have all these agreements that you may inherently have, or just keep to just as a second nature on a paper format that actually formalized. If everything goes well and everything goes as planned and everybody keeps to their role and all the promises, you don't actually need this agreement. But there is Instagram versus reality or dreams versus reality, and in reality not everything goes as well as originally planned. So even though a founders agreement is not compulsory, it is a very good idea to still have a founders agreement. One caveat: if you are a solopreneur and you are the only founder and you don't have any other people who are in the founding team, there is no point in having a founders agreement. It is a bit silly to have an agreement with just yourself. But if there are more than one people involved, having a founders agreement is a good idea. So what is inside a founders agreement? Well, it can have as many or as little clauses that you wish to have included. Generally, the founders agreement first includes the obligations of each founder, so what it is that each of you does. I mean, yes, you can be a jack of all trades, but generally it is a good idea that people have a divided responsibility and everybody knows what they have to do or what is somebody's area of responsibility. So this is a huge chunk of it. Who does what? Who is responsible of which tasks to get done? Because if the responsibilities are not divided up, it is very easy to drop the ball because one person thinks the other does that, the other thinks the first one does it, and in the end nobody does it. So the responsibilities of different founders is a big part of the founders agreement. Another part of it is the commitment. How much are you willing to commit to this idea, this company, this entrepreneurship that you're doing? Generally, everybody wants to be committed as much as possible, but sometimes people have other commitments, whether they are personal or professional, because when you are starting up, you usually are not getting a salary, so you might need to be working on the side as well and may not be able to be committed full time. If this commitment part is not included, then it is very hard to actually pinpoint that, hey, you are not carrying your weight. And this is true for the division of responsibilities as well. If this is not divided, it is very hard to say, this is your job, or you haven't been doing your job as well as needed. What is more in the founders agreement is how we actually adopt decisions regarding the company, regarding the business that we are doing. Whether it needs a consensus, whether everybody needs to be on board, whether it is a simple majority. This is up to you and depends on your specific case. Usually, I would suggest that, you know, a majority, but maybe not just a simple majority, but a bit higher majority is required. But, you know, that's up to you and depends on the circumstances of the business that you are running. What is very important in the founders' agreement is the reverse vesting provisions. You might ask, what is reverse vesting? If you haven't been on the startup scene a lot, this is something that you have not come in contact with previously. So reverse vesting basically means that everybody has the shares that they have in the company, but in order for these shares to be theirs so that nobody can take them away, they need to be committed, they need to work for the company. So basically they need to earn these shares. Why it is called reverse vesting is because, well, on day one, they still have the shares, but they need to earn them, as opposed to vesting, where you don't have anything and you need to earn them. So reverse vesting is very useful in cases where somebody is lacking in their effort, if they are not doing what needs to be done. If the reverse vesting provisions are included in the founders' agreement, this allows you to avoid dead equity. So dead equity is equity that belongs to a person that is no longer committed or active in the business anymore. So this is something that you don't want to see. So reverse vesting helps you to avoid it. If somebody becomes inactive, is not pulling their weight, is not putting in the effort, is not putting in the hours anymore, reverse vesting provisions allow the other founders and the company to say, hey, you're not doing what we have agreed, so now you are out of the company and you need to give back the shares. If this is not agreed upon, then there is no possibility for such demands. Yes, it is possible to have some exclusion of shareholders under the law as well, but that is a very difficult thing, and I have never seen it actually used in practice. So reverse vesting provisions in founders' agreement are in the interest of all the founders and possibly the future of the company. Another very important topic that is regulated in the founders' agreement is confidentiality. How do you get a leg up in the business? I mean, this is your business know-how, this is your business secrets, and you would want to keep them that way. Confidentiality is not prescribed by law, so you need to agree on confidentiality obligations, and you also need to agree on the scope thereof. So in the founders' agreement, there is usually quite a long section on what is confidential information and what is not, and what to do if somebody has breached this confidentiality agreement. So this is also in the interest of all the founders and also in the interest of the company to have confidentiality obligations. If you don't have a founders' agreement, yes, you may have these confidentiality agreements in other agreements, whether it's service agreements or advisory agreements, whatnot. But a founders' agreement is a very simple and comprehensive way to have the confidentiality clauses in place regarding the circle of the founders. Another very important clause that you can have and usually has been included in the founders' agreement is non-competition. Yet again, if you are building a very revolutionary product or service, you don't want, one of your co-founders to go out and do a competitor. You want to keep everything close to you and have a non-compete in place. A non-compete is also not arising from law, so it needs to be agreed upon in an agreement. A non-compete usually says that, for the time that you are in the company and for a specific period after you have left the company, that is usually up to 12 months, you are not allowed to compete with the company. So if somebody is leaving the company, then they can't just turn around and make a competing company. So this protects your business in a way that you will still have some time that the person who has left the company is not allowed to compete with you. And this allows you to develop your business further and to have a better market position. So this is why a non-compete is a very important thing to include in the founders agreement. Another clause that is usually included in the founders agreement is non-solicitation. Most of you are aware that IT talent is very hard to come by, or whatever talented person you need, you have to search wide and far for that person. And if somebody leaves the company, you don't want them to take the team with you. Non-solicitation clauses allow you to achieve this goal. This means that if somebody leaves the company, they cannot solicit the team that is in your company to move away from your company to that other company or anywhere else. So this allows you to keep the team intact and give you a leg up in this business that you are running. And furthermore, there are some general boilerplate clauses that are basically the same among shareholders agreement and founders agreement, and these are not very specific to any case. If you want to, you can include other clauses in the founders agreement as well, but these clauses that I have currently discussed are the most central clauses in a founders agreement. So if you're still not convinced that having a founders agreement is a good idea, I will recap it. Having a founders agreement is a good idea, because if you do not have a founders agreement, you are left with only the provisions of the law and the articles of association. But the articles of association do not allow for some of the clauses to be included, or it just feels very out of place to have these clauses in the articles of association. What is more, articles of association is a public document. So anybody who is going to pay €2 in the commercial register can see what is in the articles of association. Whereas the founders agreement is an internal document that is confidential, that is only known to the parties of the agreement. So whatever you have in the founders agreement is only known to the parties of the agreement and not the general public. So this allows you to have very specific, very detailed, very case-oriented clauses in the founders agreement, which you might not want to have in the articles of association. The law does protect the shareholders, does protect some of the interest, but it does not do so in such detail that you might need. So if you do not conclude a founders agreement and leave everything up to the letter of the law, the protection that the company and the shareholders are awarded is way more narrow in scope, and it is very general and not detailed. And in case of disputes, then the burden of proof is way higher, and you need to specify very much whether anything applies or not. Where in case of a specific agreement, the founders agreement that you have drafted for your specific company, in case of a dispute, you can go back to the agreement and say that, hey, this is exactly what we have agreed, so this is what needs to be done. And it is easier to have the agreement rather than the general prescription of the law. So, to conclude founders agreement. Thank you.